The Switch 2 hacking scene gets even darker. This one exploit found on the Nintendo Switch 2 costed Nintendo up to $20,000. Nintendo quietly patched it in the background without anyone even knowing. What does this mean for you as a Switch 2 owner, and why it's more important now more than ever? Make sure not to update your device to the latest firmwares. We'll speak about it in this video. Welcome to System Decoded. If you're new here, my name is Nassim. My background is in computer science with data science, and recently I've transitioned into the cybersecurity realm. On this channel, what we do is we break down complex systems into a simple format, and I provide you the framework and deep insight to understand. In typical fashion, just want to say a disclaimer: I do not promote any forms of piracy on this channel. This content is made for speculation and educational purposes only, so viewer discretion is advised. So in typical fashion, we'll break this video down into 3 distinct parts. Part number 1, we'll speak about the exploit, also why it cost the Nintendo up to $20,000, and we'll speak about what HackerOne even is. In part number 2, I'll give you the cybersecurity framework known as the OSI Model. Once you grasp this framework, you'll understand how all hacks and exploits happen and what is the hacker's mindset when they are trying to exploit devices such as the Switch 2. And in part number 3, I'll speak about what it all means for Switch 2 owners and its future implications for the gaming scene as a whole. So let's speak about it in this video. Before we get into the exploit, we need to understand what HackerOne is. HackerOne is simply a platform utilized by Nintendo to report any bugs. So if you are a hacker, you don't have to always do things illegally. And it's a real career path that you can really. So as you can see here, all the reports and bugs are literally reported on this platform. And literally Nintendo will pay you. Organizations in general will pay you up to like $20,000 to $50,000, depending on the severity of the exploit that you found. Now let's speak about the exploit found. This absolute genius hacker basically found a flaw in the SSL module. In simple terms, what he basically did is he set up his own Nintendo proxy server, managed to connect to the Switch 2 device. What that means is this: the Nintendo Switch 2 can't just connect to any random server. It needs to connect to Nintendo's server. It does this via what's known as a signature. However, what this hacker did is he set up his own proxy server and he set up his own virtual environment, which I'll show you in a second, on what tools he used, on how he did it. He found that Nintendo's device isn't checking for any sort of signature. What that means in practice is that theoretically, he could have injected malware right there. He could have injected firmware. He could have injected anything. It was quite a severe exploit. From my research, I speculate that he made up to $20,000 to $30,000 for this layer 6 exploit, which I'll speak about in part 2 of the video. It's all good and all to speak about the fact that this hacker set up a proxy server and connected to a Switch 2. But what does that actually mean? What is a virtual environment? Let me just show you dead quickly what a hacking lab actually looks like. So this is my computer, and I'll quickly open up my own hacking lab. So if we open up this folder, you can use a software called VirtualBox and VMware. So I'm going to double click VMware this just to show you how easy it is to set this up. I'm going to remove that. So do is you choose your operating system, either Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, and then you basically mount it onto this software. So this is my Kali Linux, and that's it. You can mess about with your processors, you can mess about with your RAM, depending on the specifications of your overall PC. So I'm just going to use 2 processors for now. And all you do literally to start your hacking lab is press play, and that's it. And this is running on, as you can see, it's literally running on top of my Windows computer. This is Kali Linux now, and this is what most hackers use to basically exploit target devices. And here is Kali Linux fully booted up. This is Kali Linux. This is Linux that everyone speaks about. And this one specifically is designed for hackers. And a dead easy giveaway is the apps found on this left here. As you can see, you have something called Terminator, the terminal shell, and then we have something called Warp, which is an AI-based terminal. I'll show you what one looks like. And that's the terminal. You can type in whatever you want. And Linux is way more powerful because you can literally do anything with Linux, where Windows and Mac, you do kind of have gatekeepers. But with Linux, you're just basically open to do anything you want. A recommendation I do have is actually research the origins of Linux and why it was created. It's actually really fascinating. Anyway, so this is the hacker lab right here. Curious, by the way, how to set up your own hacker lab. I do have a Patreon with a full tutorial in there that I'm going to leave all these tutorials and stuff in that page. Notice with YouTube that I can't really share all the stuff I want to share because I kind of get censored and YouTube's policies. So I do need to just share them in the Patreon. So if you do want to learn cybersecurity, then make sure to join the Patreon. And it also helps support the channel. Right, now that we're done with setting up our hacking lab, we'll speak about OSI model in the next part of the video. So in this part of the video, I'm going to give you the cybersecurity framework as promised. And once you understand this framework, by the way, this is my absolute favorite framework of all time. I am absolutely geeking out so hard. Understand this framework, you'll understand how all hacks even happen in the first place. Now, this is called the OSI model. This stands for Open Systems Interconnection Model, and it splits every network down into 7 layers. Now, I'm going to explain this in the context of this switch to hack, right? In simple terms, this is what happens, right? You have your Nintendo Switch and it connects to Nintendo's headquarters. Very simple. Splits up into 7 layers. 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7. What the hacker does is he basically intercepts this connection. Particular exploit, he just pretended to be Nintendo. So Nintendo was fooled by this guy to think it was the Nintendo server. And that's why this exploit was so severe. And it also happened in layer 6 of the network. And that's where the hacker managed to find an exploit, which, for the record, if you can just pretend to be Nintendo, then anything's basically possible at that point. And that's why this was such a big exploit, but it just got brushed over like it was nothing. Quickly go through the first 5 layers because all the meat happens in layer 6 and layer 7. Now, I do understand that I said before that it was only layer 6, but it also actually technically happened in layer 7, which I'll explain once we get there. So layer 1 is the physical layer. And all this is basically taking electrical signals and representing them as binary code. Very simple. The whole purpose of this layer is to take electrical signals, pass them through some sort of physical wire. Sorry for the bad drawing. Some sort of physical wire, and get that to your destination. Different subtopics, but this is going into more electrical engineering, and this isn't where the exploits actually happen. But there are things like different types of jacks, different wiring standards. Just to provide you context in the gaming world, this is where actually voltage glitch manipulation, this is the layer that it happens in. So just to provide some context. So the data link layer, all it does is take that binary code that we represented electrical signals before, and what we're doing is organizing them into known as a frame. So basically, all you need to understand with the data link layer, organizing and making sense of the binary code. And the data unit is known as a frame. There are 2 sub-layers, which is MAC and LLC. MAC deals with specific addresses, and LLC deals with 3 things, which is synchronization, it deals with error handling, and it also deals with what's known as flow. Just a quick note is that this model is called TCP/IP. Now, TCP/IP is actually the standard we use today. For reference, we actually use the OSI model. Network layer, we've now taken the binary, we've put it into a frame, we've made sense of it. And now what the network layer is basically takes that and gives it an IP address. There are different protocols used for the network layer, V4 and IPv6, and understand that this whole layer is about routing. So before in layer 1 and 2, it's about your local connection. So for example, your switch to your printer, it's all connected to your local device, your IP address going from your local network to something more foreign. We're now going to cover layer number 4, which is called the transport layer. Of this, like in a post office, you're going to use about what carrier are you going to use? Are you going to use TCP? Are you going to use UDP? TCP stands for Transient Control Protocol. UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol. All you need to know about TCP and UDP is that TCP is the safe one. It uses what's known as a 3-step handshake. It's SYN, SYNAC, and then an ACK, which is abbreviations for synchronization, synchronized acknowledgements, and then acknowledgements. However, all you need to know is that TCP is the safe one and UDP is the unsafe one. The transport layer is all about choosing your career. What are you going to use, the safe option or the unsafe option? About the transport layer that I forgot is that it uses what's called a segment and a datagram. Using TCP, you use what's known as a segment. And if you're using UDP, you'll use what's known as a datagram. Now we're going into session layer. This is very simple, right? all you need to know is that this is the session start, the session maintenance, and the session end. And if you lose connection, your session reconnect. So presentation is, this is all about format. And all this is basically putting your files into a format that is readable. For example, .pdf, .doc, if you're trying to send over a Word document. In software development, you'll put your JavaScript into what's called a JSON file. However, there is one more step in this presentation layer called encryption. And this is where the penny will drop. Encryption is all about making sure your data is not readable. And this is where SSL comes in, i.e. where this hacker found this exploit. He found it in layer 6. SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer. And this is just to make sure that when your data is sent across the network, nobody can read it, right? And the way it does this is by making sure that this server is the legit one. So before, all we were doing was setting up the network. We were setting up the server. And now think of this like you're verifying the server, like you're making sure that this is the actual server that you're trying to connect to, not some proxy random hacker over here, right? We do this by having what's called a signature. Hacker did is that he set up his own server, and yet the Nintendo Switch 2 device, for whatever reason, still connected. And this is where the exploit happened. Once that exploit happened, we go into what's called the application layer. And this is all about requesting and sending and receiving data from the actual server. You hear terminology like push and get and requests and things like that. That's all in this application layer. Usually used in this layer is things like HTTP. So they're the 7 layers in a very simple nutshell. I've really skimmed over that due to the time constraints, but understand that every single layer has its own field, has its own protocols, and it does get so deep. But moving forward now, the thing I want you to take away is this, right? Is that whenever you see a hack or an exploit, the first thing you need to ask is, where was this exploit found? Was it found in layer 6? Was it found in layer 5? And this is where the terminology in the field of what layer problem is this? Is this a layer 2 issue? Is this a layer 3 issue? Is this a layer 5 issue? So for example, now when you hear these hackers talk about like, oh, he managed to get the data, understand that he's gotten at one of these layers. And this is so cool. So now let's end the video with future implications. Now that we've covered the OSI model and what the actual exploit even was, let me speak about what this means for you as a Switch 2 owner. The advice I've got is, if you can, I recommend do not updating your firmware to the latest software. The reason is that there are going to be inevitably future exploits found. And if you have the latest firmware, you won't be able to utilize those exploits, and you'll have to find a way to basically downgrade your system and things of that nature. So that's why I do think Switch 2 devices with older firmwares will be worth so much more money in the future. Second biggest implication is this. We've already found a layer 6 hack, and although it was reported to HackerOne, imagine now 3 to 6 months, even 9 months from today, the amount of different penetration attempts that will be implemented onto the Switch. Already now had a layer 6/7 exploit only 3 months into the Switch 2's life cycle. And there is a real sentiment for the Switch 2 to be hacked due to the disgruntled nature of the Nintendo audience as a whole. So that's why I think there will be inevitably an exploit found. The cheer. I know this video was a bit long-winded. If you did get to the end of the video, thank you so much. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Being the same from System Decoded. I will speak to you soon.